were there ever instances where there were like disputes or drama between people in the house, like, and you know what, if that happens, like what was kind of, how was that dealt with, or did that just like never arise really?
No, there was lots of that.
Okay.
Lots of that, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, well, I'll give you some examples of some of the things that were not permitted by T and O in their minds. You know, it doesn't mean that it didn't happen and anybody was punished because of it, but became a lesson that, like, let's say a partnership was having disagreement, and they weren't getting past it. But they were causing a disturbance. So other people in the house were aware that they were having a disagreement. That wasn't appropriate. So you would take your disagreement to another room. Now let's say you were having a disagreement and one partner said, I had enough of this, I'm leaving, and just walked out of the room. That wasn't appropriate either. You were supposed to try to work it out, and sometimes working it out meant agreeing to not talk about it at that moment. And sometimes it meant going to the overseers of the whatever, you know, and asking them if they could help us work it out. Because everything was surrounding tasks. Like, I mean, you could have a task to on labeling the audio tape for the meeting. Okay, there was a crew that was assigned to. I was on that task, but this talks about, you know, answering to people. Like sorority was like a primary in that task. It wasn't actually documented as sorority primary on the audio taping task. It wasn't that way, but sorority was given the task to. So whatever partner he was with, because partnership changed, that partner became a secondary to the primary doing that task. And so I wouldn't I wouldn't say to sorority when we were doing that task, can I push the buttons, you know, on the tape recorder to change it? And can I actually fill out the label of what the title would be? And but sorority, from his point of view, he wouldn't offer to me to push the buttons on the recorder because he was the primary in that task. So I knew that, but when it came to the label, he would say to me, "What do you think about this?" for the title of the, you know, because we couldn't say everything that Doe talked about or T talked about in that 45 minutes or an hour and a half meeting. So, but you know, we knew that we were going to put the date on there and then some kind of title. And most of the time when he said, "What about this?" I would say, "All right, that sounds okay," you know. But sometimes things like that would happen, and the partner might say, "No, what about this?" You know, instead. And the other partner might say, "Well, I don't know," you know, and there could be like a little ego battle going on, you know, with wanting to be, you know, "Oh, what's wrong with my suggestion," you know, on this, and so you could have that can translate into everyday life in many ways.
I think a lot of that happened in the cooking of things. What do you guys call the kitchen?
The nutra-lab.
The
nutrition
nutra-lab.
lab.
Because they mentioned it on one of the tapes, you know, like we got to get over our differences in the nutra-lab. And like
Right.
one person wants to cook it this way and somebody else wants to cook it that way. Well, we have a procedure for how to cook that recipe. Get the recipe card out and use that. Don't use your own mind. Use what we've given you.
Right, and
specifically, T was talking about in a meeting, like it's interesting the minutia of day-to-day life that they went over and over and over. And I don't want to say an outsider, but somebody for the first time listening to that stuff would be like, well, who the hell cares how they cook chili mac? Like, let's just make chili mac. But like, there was a recipe card written, and it specifically said to use Lowry's seasoning. And for some reason, something had gotten mistranslated or whatever, and when people were going to the grocery store for supply runs, they were getting McCormick seasoning. And T&O did not like McCormick seasoning. It was not good, right? They were like, that's the bottom of the barrel, basically. We said Lowry's because it's the best. It's good. We're not trying to like pinch pennies or whatever. She asked somebody to go get the recipe card so she could see what was written on it, because she had written a recipe card that said Lowry's. The recipe card that they brought to her was not in her handwriting. Somebody else had transferred it and left that out and just said seasoning.
Mm.
So it was like these little, she's like, I don't even, like, there was like, it seemed like almost frustration at points. Like, we're telling you things, but it's going through your computer and you're filtering it out and putting something down that we did not tell you to put down.
Didn't you
they
say
might have
that?
a reason for that, though. I mean, it's not like people were making things up necessarily, but they might think, that T&O do want to try to be economical about things. That is part of it. And the supply run people was a task. Not everybody did that task.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much the same people that were the overseers of the nutra-lab, which ended up being Chakotay and Junodi a lot of times, they were supply run. And so they had their own book of procedures of what to get and what not to get and blah, blah, blah.
If they don't have this, get this instead.
Right. And sometimes they were running into circumstances where
they wouldn't have either of those things.
Right. And so what do they do?
Get?
What do they do? Do they get nothing, or do they come back with something? Or, and because you couldn't always just call T and no and say, because they didn't want phone calls a lot of the time. They expected us to work things out and try to cover our bets on doing the right thing, and then report to them what we did in our choices.
And they would hope that you worked it out in a next level way.
Yes, that was
That
most important.
Beings of the next level would work together to come to the solution.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't just say, well, I think we should get this. It's, what do you think? How do you think we should proceed? Let's figure it out together.
So what would happen if somebody was assigned a task and you were working with them on that task? Like take putting the labels on the videotapes, for example. What if somebody were to tell you to do, I don't know, to do something or not do something, and in your mind it sounded, not that it sounded like something you don't want to do, but rather this doesn't seem to comport with what T and Do would want, and this person who I'm supposed to be kind of not arguing with, I feel like those are the kind of disputes that are really challenging within any group, because it's like, it's not about, because they're both basically arguing over what is the best way to do what we're both supposed to be doing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did that ever arise at all, like disputes?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, there was constantly. I mean, certain individuals got along better with one another, but what needed to be the focus the whole time was the task. So if you're going to spend a lot of time arguing about how to do the task because you don't have clear procedures to deal with certain circumstances, then, and the task suffers because of that, then you got to just come up with something that covers your bets. In other words, what seems to be the least detrimental thing to do, and then check with T&O about it when you get the chance to see how they would have dealt with it. But you don't let the task suffer, because the task is important.
Like doing the laundry or something. You don't want to sit there and argue about it for 30 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and you could have already washed a load, right?
Right, and that would happen in the nutra-lab. That would happen in a lot of different circumstances. Like, for instance, one example was like we were assigned in partnerships to do a writing project using the computer, okay? So one person's sitting there at the keyboard. You can't have two people on the same keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
And you I remember doing this with Andoti, Frank.
And sorority too, right? You guys work together.
Yeah, sorority to some degree also, but in particular in this case, I was partnered with Andoti, and we had got instructions to try to write something, because partnerships to work together, but they didn't explain to us exactly how to go about it. And so, you know, now Andoti was much more particular than I was in certain things. And that could be good, and that could be not so good. Because, and you know, so you come up with the wording of something, and then T and O found out about how the problems were arising, and they said, no, one person should do the writing, and then the other person can check it and determine whether, you know, you know, talk about the things that aren't clear in it and things like that. But you wouldn't both sit there and try to come up with every word in the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an extreme of trying to be a check partner for one another. And you know, so that's, you know, another little example. But also like with the programming tasks that we had, Sorority and I were actually assigned to create a little company. And we called it WordWise. Actually, the first one was called ThinkLink. We got a DBA wherever we were, in Texas or somewhere, or Colorado, for ThinkLink. And we came up with the name, I think. I don't remember exactly where the name came from, but I think Sorority and I came up with it. And so I wanted to, you know, neither one of us was a primary on the task, but we had a program to write. We were going to actually write software for a bank in Houston, and we did actually do that project. But when we started with, I was at the keyboard. Now Sorority is a fast thinker. He's like Cathy in some ways. He's a fast thinker.
Is he? Was he the first person who comes on the exit tapes with the glasses and the
Red hair?
Yeah.
Reddish hair, yeah.
He was also
That's
the
right.
last person in the Doe's final exit.
Where he
When
said he
Doe
was a
went
class
around.
joker. Kind
Mhm.
of
The
thing.
class clown
Yeah.
when he went around.
I
That's
thought so.
Sorority.
He seemed like
Right.
high energy, like
Yeah.
even
Yes.
on the video, on the exit statement
And
video.
Sawyer
Yeah.
was partnered with him quite a bit.
And I'm
Okay.
the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm slow,
Yeah.
I'm
He has to
methodical,
think.
and you know, I'm not even, you know, that clear thinking sometimes.
Did they try to pair people up like in
Sometimes.
certain? Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, it was for growth.
Mm.
The partnerships were designed for growth.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want, but they also designed partnerships that would get the task done. It wasn't just about, there was going to be growth no matter what. But some partners got along so well that they let the other partners take the lead.
How
When
does
they shouldn't take the lead necessarily.
right?
Or if they were like too similar, it's like, well, you know, we're just gonna keep going in this vein or whatever. Like we both agree, so let's keep doing this. But that's not
You're not
the way
challenged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like it was. You know, like Sawyer said, Sorority was fast and he was slow.
So
So
I'd
to
be at the
speak, so-
keyboard, and this was in the days of the DOS operating system. You know, before Windows came about.
Run command.
And so you'd have to type in the word, you know, run, you know, right, or type blah blah blah, or copy, you know, blah 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 to this file, all that. So I'd be sitting there thinking about, okay, what COPY, and he'd already had done it, or he would have, in his mind, he would have done it twice in the time that I was taking. So he was like, you know, sitting there right next to me, you know, and I'm thinking, okay, sir, just hold back, just give me some breathing room, you know, because I get, if that happens to me, basically, I get slower even.
Mm.
You know, I
And
might
I have
actually
had
be pretty
instances,
fast
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
in the things I do, but when I got somebody looking over my shoulder that's anticipating that I'm, you know, not fast enough and stuff, then I start to, you know, I get jammed up.
But like he has said to me several times, if you just, I could have got it done in if just 20 more seconds. You just let me figure it out.
Like in the nutra-lab, sometimes the primary would be the one that actually measured the ingredients. But the secondary, what they would do would be verify that they're doing it all correctly and using procedures. And the first thing they would do is actually say, here's the spice that we're using. This recipe card, you both read the recipe card ahead of time, and then when you come up to the recipe, you grab the thyme, you know, or the whatever, oregano, whatever it is. You show it, you know, you look at it, and the primary says, yes, oregano, and the secondary registers, yes, that's oregano. Because if this was in a lab in the next level, and that was like nitroglycerin, you want to make sure you're doing the right thing with it. You know what I mean? So that's where T and O were coming from. They were preparing us to learn the procedures so that we could just go into a lab and we can just fit in.
I guess the issue for me is like everything is procedure, right? So everything gets done the same every time, and I feel like that maintains like consistency and order, which can be good. But I feel like it kind of makes me think, well, where can growth happen if everything is always done the same exact way? So like maybe especially like now, because there isn't someone alive on Earth kind of running things.
Right.
Do you find there's more opportunities for kind of finding new ways to grow within this belief system?
Before you answer, real quick, like there were procedures, but they changed all the time.
Okay.
So like one day you may do it this way, and 2 days later you may do it a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think 88 update, or one of like change is the name of the game. That's one of the phrases that they said. Keywords. Change is the name of the game. If there's one thing we know for certain, is that it's going to change.
This was what they wrote after T left?
No,
Or-
T was still.
Oh wait, yes,
Yeah,
88
Joe wrote
update,
that in
yeah.
88.
Okay.
But it was like
But that
things
expression
that T would
came
say.
before
But that was
T
already
left.
there. Okay.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
like certain things did like we want to use Lowry seasoning and not McCormick, right, for certain things. But they would eat chili mac and then it wouldn't be on the menu ever again, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we're not even making that anymore. Like they're constant updating of procedures
But where,
Where
as
does
they
the-
receive them from their older members.
Okay.
but where the growth comes from is when you act restrained, when you're flexible, when you're thorough, when you're having like with Cathy and I, this happens with people in the world, of course, all the time, relationships, to where they do something and you're annoyed by it. Now, are you going to say something about it? Or are you just going to take the higher side and think, this annoyance is actually my opportunity to not be annoyed and to overcome that annoyance, and that actually produces growth.